Okay, it's time for another YouTube Q&A. And with this video, this might be the last one I do for a while. I actually like doing these videos, but the problem is it seems now I'm not getting very many good questions to answer. So if you want to leave good questions, do it, and then I'll just keep putting them on the list and then I'll do it. Also, apologies, because I know I've had some questions asked to me and I've sent them on my mobile. I've replied to the person, say I'll do I'll do an answer to that. Then I go and look for their comment later and it seems to have deleted itself or something, or YouTube's hidden it. So there's some that I've said I'll answer, and then before I get a chance to go on the PC and copy and paste them into a text document to print off, they've disappeared. So we'll start off. Joshua Seeley says, what would you do if you came across a modified gas mask, and would it be a good idea to buy it? Completely depends how it's been modified, how rare it is, and all stuff like that. If the price is right, if it's relatively cheap for what it is and it's a cool modification, yeah, maybe I'd get it. If it's one where somebody's turned it into some weird GIMP mask, no, I wouldn't. Okay, a very long question from Jacob Dagger. What is your opinion of the Cold War? Do you believe the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc were really the bad guys? What did you think of their civil protection systems, and was the West unnecessarily aggressive to the East? Opinions on the Korean, Vietnam and Iraq wars too. Were they justified or unjustified? And the Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. So obviously I have to start breaking that down into smaller chunks, it's such a long thing. So in the bit, what is your opinion of the Cold War? I guess that's not a question itself, it's do you believe the Soviet Union and the Eastern Bloc were really the bad guys? And yes, I do, simply because of the fact you can go to Eastern Europe, speak to people there, and there was massive genocides carried out, police states, people put against the wall and shot, disappeared, sent to the gulags, everything like that. There was McCarthyism in America, but it was nowhere near the scale of that. So in terms of which was the better of the two ideologies, communism was blatantly the worst one because of how many people ended up being shot or sent to gulags to try and keep the stupid system running. As I've probably said before, in theory communism's a lovely idea, in practice it will never work, and the people who try and implement it always end up killing lots of people. I think limited socialism is very good, looking after the most vulnerable people in society. But not when you get to the stupid extent of let's shoot people who disagree with us and everybody's going to end up disagreeing with us. What do I think of their civil protection systems? In terms of all of their civil defence stuff, the communists were much better than the West. If you go to a lot of the eastern countries and look around, they still got a lot of actual fallout shelters and things that were designed for lots of the population to go in. They had made gas masks to issue to people. So as much as they were oppressive, they had actually considered civil defence properly. And if you were a person in one of those countries, I suppose it was a bit better if the bombs were going to drop, because you at least had somewhere to go and a gas mask to wear, whereas in the West that wasn't necessarily true. The interesting thing as well is I think Russia still pays people to be civil defence sort of workers, where in most Western countries it's a volunteer role. So that means obviously you get a lot more organisation, because for a lot of people it ends up being a career rather than an actual, thing they do in their part-time. Was the West unnecessarily aggressive to the East? Yes and no, especially as we start getting into those lists of wars and invasions. Both sides fought proxy wars, so as far as I'm concerned they're not really any worse than each other in that regard. The Soviets invaded Afghanistan. The Soviets did a lot of stuff in South America, obviously in lots of African countries as well, so did the West. So, I don't think each side's as bad as each other for that, and it's still going on today with all these stupid proxy wars that, kill the innocent people in the countries, but both superpowers decide they want to back a side, essentially mercenaries, to fight for it, or go in themselves blatantly. So with the Korean War, obviously, if you know about the history of the Korean War, after World War II, Korea was divided, like sort of Europe, into two states, the communist North Korea and the sort of capitalist South Korea. And North Korea invaded the South, so obviously North Korea was responsible for the Korean War. I think the big mistake was that they didn't let Douglas MacArthur drop the bombs he wanted to, sort the war out that way, so now it's been a stalemate and you've still got a horrible communist system in the North killing its own people. So yeah, they should have let Douglas MacArthur, when he had the chance, drop the bomb. So where was the next bit? Vietnam. Vietnam is an absolute mess of a war. To be honest, I don't know too much about how the Vietnam War started, because I know it was a problem to start with the French, and then Australia got involved, and then America got involved, and obviously America totally screwed up the Vietnam War. The issue was the Americans weren't allowed to invade the north and actually, you know, beat the Ho Chi Minh government. So it was sort of a police action where they just sort of did all these horrible things for ages. They pulled out, and then they didn't supply South Vietnam afterwards like they promised to, and South Vietnam got overrun with the North Vietnamese after they'd signed a peace treaty saying there was a ceasefire or whatever. So Vietnam was a total mess, so I don't know who you'd really blame for that. Iraq wars, well, against Saddam maybe they were justified, but the last one, no. Obviously, as we know, there were no chemical weapons, or not very many. Saddam was a horrible person, but at least he kept the country sort of stuck together a bit like Gaddafi in Libya. Once you overthrow a lot of these sort of dictators in these countries, the countries just fall apart to the extent that they're far worse than they were under the dictators. So that's my idea. Are they justified or unjustified? But as like I wasn't there, you know, I can't say from that perspective. And a Bay of Pigs invasion of Cuba. Well, I know Castro killed a lot of people, but I know Cuba wasn't very nice before Castro, so I don't really have an opinion on that. It seems like, you know, you went from one crap government to another crap government. Lewis Arthur says, Q&A question, if the British airsoft laws were like the US ones, or just not stupid, would you get into the sport? I think I've said this before, I have gone airsofting before. My main issue is actually not with the laws around the stuff, it is just simply finding people to go with. Because most of the sites do it on Sundays. Lots of people have to work Sundays now. If you know people who work Sundays, then you can't actually, you know, do it on a Sunday easily. So I've been before, I'd like to keep going airsofting, but it just can be often quite a pain to actually, you know, organise it with people and go, especially if they work on weekends. Okay, so Centric Mim says, would you rather eat a whole potato in 1 minute or butt chug a half-litre bottle of vodka? It's going to obviously be the potato, because I'd have it chopped up and fried as chips, and then I could eat that in a minute quite easily, so yeah, the potato. Anon1 says, do you think later down the road the government will become more authoritarian and oppressive towards people's certain rights? Yeah, I think pretty much of anything. As I said, I've stopped watching the news now because I just find it so depressing and bleak, but I generally just think with most governments that the more power you give them, the more they abuse it, the more corrupt they become. That's why I don't like big governments. As I was saying earlier on, I hated the communists. You can use Eastern Europe as an example of what happens when you let completely unaccountable people hold power. The amount of people that get murdered or put in prison, forced labour, anything like that. So, yeah, I see the same thing happening with a lot of big governments. Governments are good when they're held accountable. The more generally governments like to pass knee-jerk laws where rather than doing laws that actually benefit people, they do a law that sounds like it will please people, so people think it sounds good, and then they do lots of draconian stuff with that. Lots of the UK laws have been like that over time, where they say they're doing one thing to help people save lives or whatever, and it ends up just taking more and more people's rights away. Important thing to note is obviously when Richard Nixon, there was a whole Watergate scandal, he lost his job over all that, even though it's a very minor thing by the stuff today's politicians get away with, and then you have them doing all this stuff today and nothing ever comes of it. So yeah, I think politics is really dirty and corrupt. I don't like most of the governments. There are some governments in some countries that do really good jobs, but in Britain, I think in a lot of countries, they're not held accountable enough for when they screw up election promises, and just basically break people's trust over and over and over again. Lavalo8 says, okay, I have a better one. I guess that's a better question. If everyone in the military had a gas mask, why would they gas them? Because there's chemical weapons that are designed to get through gas masks or break down filters quickly. Area denial weapons, for example, with nerve agents, because you'd have to have the full gas mask and NBC CBRN suit on for them. That's very uncomfortable and not very good. If you look at World War I, despite the fact that by the late end of the war on the Western Front everybody had a gas mask, they were non-stop gassing each other. Because, for example, if you have a gas mask on but you get hit with a blister agent like mustard gas or Lewisite, that's going to cause incredibly, nasty skin damage, potentially poisoning through the skin. So even if you had a gas mask, it's not enough to protect you. But there's not really been chemical weapons used much in recent years, thankfully, mostly because everybody is issued with a gas mask, so there's a lot less advantage to it. But a gas mask on its own is not enough to protect people. Michael Hernandez says, have you ever been shot? No, I've never been shot, if you mean shot with a conventional firearm. I have been threatened at knife point and threatened with a baseball bat before, but never, you know, shot. So there's that. I said one of the reasons when I used to work in the city, I used to go in with a stab-proof vest is I just had, you know, too many dodgy encounters and thought I need to really be wearing a Kevlar vest around now. But yeah, I've been threatened quite a few times, but I've never actually been shot or stabbed. But no, I certainly haven't been shot. Contrast says, do you believe in the New World Order? Also, do you believe in God? New World Order. I don't believe that there's like an Illuminati council where everybody sits around a table, but I do think that there's a lot of deep state elements in a lot of countries. So what that means is that regardless of who you vote for, there's a lot of very rich people with a lot of power and influence who basically say to the politicians who've been elected, this is what you're going to do, or bribe them to do certain things, you know, influence their politics. So yeah, I think with most nations, I don't believe there's a New World Order, but I do believe there's very powerful people behind the scenes that, regardless of who's elected, they always have quite a bit of influence over the politicians. Do you believe in God? Yes, but not really in a really religious sense, I guess. Like, as I said before, I've had weird paranormal experiences, so I definitely think there's more than can be explained by science currently. But I you know, don't go to church because I don't like organised religion the same way I don't like organised governments, because I think it's all very corrupt and, you know, a power and money thing. Yeah, I do believe there's something deeper to life, if you want me to put it that way, but I don't believe it in the hallelujah sort of sense that way. But if I had to say I was religious, I'd say I was Christian, just simply because that's the kind of, you know, cultural religion of Britain and everything. Metro Police says, is there a firearm you always wanted to own? Quite a few, but yeah, I'd always like an L1A1 SLR that actually was usable. In case of a nuclear attack scenario where the area you currently live in would be highly affected by radioactive fallout, what actions would you take? Well, there's not many places in the UK you could be safe from fallout because of the size of the UK, and if there's a proper nuclear exchange, just how glass the UK is going to get. All you can really do is try and board up your windows, cover your windows, get your gas masks and shelter inside and hope not too much gamma radiation gets through your walls, really. And what's your favourite PC game? Already answered this. Favourite PC game was Oddworld's Abe's Exodus, that's also on PS1. But you know, I also said in the other video I really like Stronghold, and that's actually a PC exclusive, so if you want an exclusive Stronghold, there's lots of other games I like, but that like my actual favourites would be those. And Angelo Frizone says, spring assisted or fully automatic knives, switchblades, would you buy one if available? Yes, if I was able to get one I'd be able to, but they're banned in this country, so sadly you can't buy them because they are a banned weapon, and I don't really want to be, as much as I don't agree with a lot of laws, I'm not actually going to go out and break them. So yeah, there's lots of things like that I'd like to own, but sadly because we're in the UK where, you know, everything is verboten, I am not able to get such interesting things. Right, so as I said, this is the last Q&A video for a while. Feel free to ask questions if you want to, but as I've said, unfortunately a lot of people just keep asking the same questions over and over again, even when I say I've done videos on it already answered them. So if it's a new question, ask it, and at some point when I get enough questions to fill a sheet, I'll do a new Q&A video. Right, thanks for watching.